G'day everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Aussie UAP and Paranormal podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Duffield, and I'm glad to have you all with me this evening. Now, being the first episode, I should give a bit of a brief outline on what I intend to cover in the podcast, being mainly UAP and alien related, but also delving into paranormal subjects. As I'm sure a lot of you already know, the UFO or UAP phenomenon has been connected by a certain amount of people with paranormal events and certain spiritual events, with a lot of people claiming UFOs and UAPs. Sorry, I'm a little bit old school. I'm used to calling them UFOs. I'm not used to the vernacular of saying UAP just yet, but give me time. I don't think it really matters that much anyway. I mean, unidentified flying object, what's UAP? Unidentified aerial phenomenon. So I guess UFO is a little bit of a broader term. You could be a bloody dinner plate if you throw it and no one knows what it is, but an aerial phenomenon I don't see to be that much different. Yeah, so I have a bit of an interest in all fields phenomenon, you could say. And I thought, while we're all sitting around, affected by COVID, why not get into it? And Australia has a it's fairly lacking, let's say, in this sort of material. Everything we watch over here, or at least everything I can find, tends to come from overseas. We have a few older documentaries and that you find floating around on YouTube, but yes, they don't seem to quite fit in with a lot of the new stuff going on, especially with Stephen Greer's CE5 project and some of the unidentified documentaries that are coming out from America, with America releasing their footage and whatnot. There doesn't seem to be much voice coming from Australia, and I'm just going to try and fill that void as best that I can. So I'm glad to have you all with me. And this evening, it's about 8:23 in the PM here, the 23rd of the 8th, 2020. Lovely date to get started. Just a month minus a day before my birthday. So hopefully by then we'll be rocking and rolling with a few episodes up. Can't promise how often they're going to be. This evening I would like to start off just outlining a few of my own experiences. Saw my first UFO fairly early in life. I was about 7. Around the same time I saw my first ghost, you could say. Well, I would say. Anyway, I was living in Bundaberg at the time, home of the great rum distillery. That has nothing to do with it. I was too young to be drinking at that time, even though I had visited the rum distillery numerous times. My father worked right next door at the Elgas. But anyway, I've been fairly well triggered into the paranormal and alien things ever since that early age. I'm currently 30. But that was a fairly unsubstantial sighting of UAP. It was fairly quick. Outside one night I saw one in the sky, and whilst taking the garbage bins out the front for my parents, and they obviously didn't believe me. The ghost sighting at around that age was obviously a little bit more substantial, I have to admit. I'm a bit more into the paranormal than I am the alien. But like I said, they seem to be fairly connected, so I thought, why not venture down both avenues? Tonight I particularly wanted to go into one case, or one sighting that I had whilst with my sister and mother, way back when in 2006, the exact date being the 16th of May 2006. And this is connected with about the same time as apparently a meteorite breaking up in the Earth's atmosphere and shot off a lot of things. Broke up in the atmosphere and was seen fairly wide across southeast Queensland, the top of New South Wales, and even some airline pilots from New Zealand mentioned it, seeing it breaking up as entering the atmosphere. But my own experience from what I saw was quite different. Now, I don't know what exactly makes it that I saw something completely different to what, or at least what is the published account of events, but hopefully as I delve into it, it will become a bit clearer. Anyway, to paint a picture, we were leaving for a trip up north. I think we were going to Brisbane for the weekend. I can't exactly remember the destination. I'm pretty sure it was Brisbane. Anyway, we were just driving out of a little town called Tenterfield in New South Wales. Anyone in Australia might know this town just from passing, because there was a song, Tenterfield Saddler, written by Peter Allen back in the day. And also it was where the inaugural speech of Sir Henry Parkes' talk for Federation was given. And it's considered to be the birthplace of our nation, because that was when we started kicking off on Federation from the Commonwealth, or from England to be our own country. Rather important piece of history, but that has no bearing here, just to give a bit of reference of where it is. So we were driving out, and it's in the highlands, the Granite Belt region, lots of rocks and that around, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes south of the New South Wales-Queensland border. And we'd only just left, it's probably about, I don't know, maybe 5k out of town, if that. Just past the golf course anyway. And as we were driving, it was a fairly regular night. The moon wasn't up yet, so the night was fairly nice out in the country. And we get some pretty brilliant skies. And all of a sudden, across the horizon, shot this beautiful, great big green aurora effect, and the night sky lit up like nothing I'd ever seen before. We don't get auroras or anything down here, so it was fairly strange, to say the least. And what I saw of inside that aurora, I could only describe to be an immense ship. The size of it, I can hardly describe. And despite it seeming huge in the sky, like it nearly took up, say if you were looking out the car window, it took up a good quarter of the space of the window on the horizon. And that was massive. And like I thought at the time that it seemed to be fairly close, but also being so high up and coming across the horizon, I wasn't sure on the distance between us and the object, but that didn't stop me making out the object clear as day. And it was one of the most spectacular things I'd ever seen, I have to admit. I was completely awestruck, but I was very aware of what I was looking at. It was beautiful. Like the best I can describe it as, like, is your typical saucer shape with a clear divide between the bottom half of the saucer and the top. But imagine, if you could, the smoothest bit of material you could think of. Like no cracks or lights coming from the object itself. And it was as if you could imagine it being made of clay and someone had gone around in equal parts putting thumbprints up into the clay as it went around. I can't remember however many, I'll describe them as vents. But however many vents there was, I would have seen at least 4, I would imagine, on the side of the vehicle that I could see. And around these vents were floating many little orange orbs. Many. There was definitely, like, the sky was full of little orange orbs floating around the UAP object itself. And this was something I'd never heard of described before, but have heard it described since, which is what has reignited my interest in the sighting. Anyway, to continue, these orange orbs seem to be sucked in and out of the UAP itself. There was, like, just as if, like, the UAP was moving fairly slowly through the sky, and this all up only took about maybe 5 or 6 seconds, I would reckon. It wasn't very long, but the UAP was floating up, and these orange orbs were being sucked into the vents and then spat back out, and sucked back in and then spat back out. But as they were being sucked in and spat back out, the orange started to change, and the orbs over these couple of seconds, after a few cycles going in and out of these vents, changed from orange to a beautiful aurora type green, like the rest of the night light show was around the UAP. And this I thought to be odd. Well, it was all odd, but anyway. And as these lights went from orange to green, they grew brighter and brighter, and then all of a sudden the UAP, like, once the bulk of them were green, there was no orange ones left, they were sucked into the UAP, at which point it had elevated a little bit more in the night sky, was fairly high off the horizon. I had to lean forward, I'm pretty sure, to see it, because I was in the front seat, but I still had to lean forward because it was starting to reach the roof of the car and I wasn't going to be able to see it. Anyway, once they were all bright green, they got sucked in and the UAP shot off as if these things were its fuel cell. And I found this to be absolutely spectacular. And I looked at my mum and my sister and we were all like, can you just believe what we saw? And we were driving along, and it only took about maybe 3 or 4 minutes before something came along the radio describing it as a meteor shower, which had been seen, to my surprise, from where we were, way up north to the Gold Coast and Brisbane and that sort of thing. This light show was seen far and wide. It was seen so far, in fact, that it garnered a fair amount of attention, was on a large number of news outlets being reported. And since looking into this recently, I found that someone had even written a, what's it called? I have it here in front of me, that's what I'm looking at, if you're wondering. Was a, what do they call it? A scientific paper for, oh, I can't see it here where it was published. It was a scientific paper for one of the science places over in England, but it was written by an Australian named Stephen Hughes from the Department of Physics, Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane. Published by the Royal Society of London. That's it. And it's proceeding in mathematical, physical and engineering sciences. And it's titled Green Fireballs and Ball Lightning. Quite easy to find when you Google it. If I can, I'll leave a link to it in the paper, in the descriptions and that of this video. But it goes into quite a bit of depth from some of the witnesses of the event and some of some of the theories behind what could have caused the light show, because it didn't happen exactly at the same time as the meteor shower apparently, but there was a few ball lightning effects and that, which was what a lot of UFO things get put down to. Now, this I find surprising and validating in many respects. There's also, looking around for it, I found reports from police officers saying that it was a Russian satellite that fell down. Also, that it was just the meteor shower, which it wasn't a meteor shower, as the radio first described it as. It was meant to be a meteor breaking up as it entered Earth's atmosphere. And there was something else as well. And yes, ball lightning attributed to the thing. Now, the ball lightning there was a specific instance of the ball lightning falling into someone's paddock and burning up some of their field over the Great Dividing Range. Now, this doesn't surprise me, as some of when the UAP itself did shoot out after sucking up the green sparks, it clearly left a couple of them behind. And the reason why I think I may have seen something different to, because there's also photos of the green meteor passing down over the Gold Coast, and a few other photos of the phenomenon. But I believe I might have seen something different, because just above Tenterfield, on the border, is a little town called Wollongara. Now, that Wollongara is an army base. I don't know if I can smoke on here, it might get taken out, but if not, I'll re-record. And this army base, despite being largely abandoned, it's still in use, but there's just a few hangars there and not really much else. But they still have fairly tight security. You can't go on there, even though a lot of the security's local, they're pretty onto it. They seem to have some pretty good tech, whatever it is, that keeps guard at the fences and monitors the location. And a lot of us have seen some fairly strange things. There used to be, coming south from Tenterfield, not up Wollongara way, but there used to be strange lights coming from down around that area. I was a bit of a night owl as a kid, being a small country town. We didn't have much to do, so I spent a lot of time walking around with mates. And a lot of us had seen strange things. Not just light related, but many different sorts of phenomenon. There used to be one thing that we called the midnight scream, and me and my friends used to encounter it nearly every night walking around, and it happened around midnight every night, and you'd hear a lady screaming bloody murder as if she was being killed, or someone she knew was being killed. And me and my friends, being the inquisitive sort, went to locate the scream on many occasions, and it was like trying to chase a rainbow. The closer you got to the scream, the further away the scream became. You could never locate it. And I've spoken to a lot of people about it in town, and a lot of people heard it. It doesn't seem to happen as much anymore. I don't live there anymore, but every time I've gone back I haven't heard it. But yeah, for a long time there, it happened nearly every night. Yeah, so a lot of strange stuff happens around the area. There's a lot of Aboriginal land and that sort of stuff. Got some falls out there that no one's ever reached the bottom of. Like, you have crocodiles rock up there because there's apparently underground waterways that go from the ocean to the inland, which is a bloody long way. Those crocs go for a fair height. And it's fresh water, so they mustn't like it very much. But it has happened. But this, the fact that there's an army base there, and it is directly in, well, we suspect it to be directly in line with some Air Force going on, because apparently when Australia bought up a lot of America's F-111s, they were meant to have stored a lot of the parts at this particular Air Force base. But that's just rumour as well. I mean, I wouldn't put myself on as a authority on what goes on there. But you know, we get the army coming through every now and again, at least, you know, a couple of times a year, and going to the base and whatnot. But it adds a little bit of speculation to why I would have seen a UAP floating up from that specific spot in the country, whereas the people up further north on the Great Dividing Range and towards the Gold Coast saw just the light effects and the ball lightning residue of after the UAP took off. And why, another reason, the reason I said that I'd heard about this type of thing before, I don't have the video anymore, but I had an interview, if anyone out there has heard of this, I had an interview with, I had a video of an interview with someone who had claimed to create a faster than light speed engine using a certain type of radiation that doesn't die and is able, like, to be used as a fuel source, which is a some type of nuclear fuel source, I'm pretty sure they said, which charges up, and then the cells of which only require the residual background radiation of the atmosphere, wherever it may be, to recharge the cells and continuously push it on through its, you know, whatever the ship is connected to, through its paces. So it needs no form of battery or charge, and can like, once charged up, offers continual thrust and acceleration, because there's no need for any other fuel source, and it's never ending. So theoretically the engine reaches faster than light speed. Also, in this interview, this person, the engineer, the guy who designed the engine, claimed, I heard him name drop Stephen Greer, and Stephen Greer was keeping him pretty under the wing, I'm pretty sure, so that, you know, nothing happened to him and everything good came from the you know, his invention, rather than, you know, just being swept under the rug. They would get use of it. As I said, I can't remember who the engineer was. I don't have the video anymore. It was just on a hard drive given to me by someone with a number of these things, and I can't find it on YouTube anymore, because for some reason YouTube doesn't seem to be what she used to be. But this was definitely an event. I've been in contact with a few people about this sighting. I've contacted MUFON. What does that stand for again? I'm pretty sure Mutual UFO Network. And they agreed with me that there's something in the story. For it to have garnered so much attention, including a paper in, what was it again? The Royal Society of London Science about the event, and the leftover ball lightning, which, as I said, I attribute to be the little balls of light that was being used as a fuel source by the UAP. It would not surprise me at all. But I found it extremely compelling, and has kept me on, because kept me on the UAP and alien front for many years. It's a little bit late now, being 2020, what's it, 14 years since the event, that I'm finally decided to talk publicly about it and start investigating more into these things. But, you know, better late than never, as they say. This paper for the Royal Society of London goes into a fair bit of depth. Just trying to find some interesting points in here. Yeah, people were said to have seen blue and red lights, including green fireballs. And there was also, along with it, fireballs seen. There's some pictures here of some pretty bright, just plain white fireballs passing over Brisbane, which I wasn't close enough there to see what that could have been. But there's clearly something here. But I wonder, obviously, if it was some secret launch by the Australian military of one of our own ships, which a lot of people believe that we've had space program, not Australia specifically, but we're linked with America in many ways, with Pine Gap and that sort of thing. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's a bit of work going on here as well as other places. But yes, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we have some type of secret bases out around that area in the New England and the Granite Belt region that this may have been launched from. And like I said, if anyone out there has heard of that type of engine before, I would love to hear from you, because like I said, I've lost the specific video with the engineer discussing it. But it's also one that I haven't heard of since. You hear many projects being talked about. I watch a little bit of the UFO documentaries. I've seen a couple episodes of that Unidentified. But I still haven't heard this engine discussed anywhere before, which in my opinion adds a little bit more credence to it, because they're obviously not going to be out there discussing it for obvious reasons, and especially if they've got that up over some other country. And might be spilling the beans a little bit here, but if the actual engineer's already done interviews, then I don't think I could hurt very much more by talking about it. So yeah, other than that, I've seen another couple. There's been a lot of activity recently over WA. There's been a few videos of meteorite crashes, which for the last probably 2 months, I would say, have been fairly prominent in the Western Australian sky, which is where I'm located at the moment, over in WA. But I saw something. I saw another UAP a few mornings ago whilst walking, because I work nights, so I'm up at that time fairly often. And I was out walking early morning and saw a light flickering on and off around the point of Jupiter in the sky. And it kept appearing and then disappearing, sort of in the same spot. And then managed to disappear and then reappear a fair way over to the left a little bit more. Now, that's probably the first UAP I've seen in a fairly long time. But these comets and whatnot, meteorites showering down around, are a cause for, I would say, concern. It always surprised me when you have a large amount of meteor activity in the sky, because considering how often we watch the sky and your astrologers and stuff, I know we don't have the best track on space junk and all the meteors that are out there, and asteroids and meteorites and that sort of thing falling. I know we don't track them all and can't possibly track them all, but normally, like, you'd think you would hear a little bit of this stuff being, like, if there's expected to be a large amounts of activity on that front, you expect it spread a little bit throughout your astrology pages, and so, especially with social media and whatnot. But I haven't heard blip, having a telescope and that sort of thing. I like getting out and looking at the night sky when I can, and you don't hear very much about good times to go out checking this sort of thing. Not that you'd see it with a telescope, but yeah, I would imagine you would hear more, which is another reason why it seems a little suspect. Like, I don't understand why. You get told about every bloody supermoon, but you don't hear about when there's going to be a decent amount of meteor showers, unless it's some annual event. I've seen another couple when I was younger. A couple when I was in school in Brisbane. I remember me and my friend Lindsay. I won't say his last name because I've lost contact. I don't know if he would really want me spurting it around. But we were sitting there one day in school, just on the benches, and having a conversation about whatever it was at that point in time, probably Dragon Ball Z or some cartoon. I think it was a little bit old for Pokemon at that point, but something along those lines. I'm sure it holds no credence to this. But out of the corner of our eye, we clearly saw a bright light reflecting off a metallic surface in the sky, which was just for a brief second, but like close enough so if it was a plane, you would clearly be able to see the plane flying. But there was no plane or anything else there. Something just appeared for a second and let a light shine down and then disappeared, which was strange. I'm sure it could be explained by something, but that was another one. And then there's also like the odd disappearing lights coming over, like the one I described in the night sky over here in WA before. But there's definitely a bit of that activity around us having a nuclear base here, but it's not close to here. Not close to Brisbane especially. It's more central Australia, a pretty big country. But there does definitely seem to be a fair bit of activity that I have noticed, considering a lot of people go their whole lives without ever seeing anything. So I find it interesting that Australia isn't bigger, well, there aren't many more Australian proponents in the UAP phenomenon area. We seem fairly content just to blow that stuff off. Maybe it's a matter of population. We're fairly loosely populated here compared to America and other countries like that. So that could just explain it. There's not enough people to get a voice out about it. But there's a couple, and well, yeah, if anyone else out there has seen anything, I would love to get your stories. Start sharing them around. Get the voice of the Aussie UAP enthusiast on the board, because like I said, we don't have enough. And also paranormal. I might leave that one there. Leave this podcast here after describing that particular event on the 16th of May 2006. Was it 18th? 16th or 18th? Whatever it was. And if anyone remembers something from back in those days along the lines of what I'm talking about, I would love to hear from you. Yeah, 16th of May 2006. Or if anyone has any other stories that they would like me to talk about on the Aussie UAP and Paranormal podcast, feel free to shoot me an email. I will leave a link to the email address in the comments. And I thank you all for your time. I look forward to doing the next episode. Till next time.